More. Let's bring in Kara Swisher, Recode co-founder. Kara, so much to dissect here. First of all, I can't figure out now which party is friendlier or least friendly to big tech based on who wins the election. And if we do see a blue sweep, is that more threatening for these big tech companies?
Absolutely. I think the Democrats, if you could look through this report, are very clear they're going to take antitrust action. At the same time, you know, a lot of Republicans do have issues, but different issues than the Democrats had, as you can see by this report. Although there was a lot of agreement here. There was some differences of how you should deal with them. I think the Republicans felt like breaking the companies up was sort of, I think they call it the nuclear option. I think Senator Buck said that. At the same time, pretty aggressively, Representative Buck, excuse me, I think pretty aggressively the Democrats in this report, it's 500 pages of saying tech really is too powerful and needs to have guardrails, and not just guardrails, they need to be broken up. And so I think if there is a blue sweep, there will be trouble for the tech companies in this regard. Although, as your previous guest said, I don't think that's a bad thing. It'd be great to have lots of new companies and lots of stocks to buy and more competition.
Which companies do you think are first in the firing line in terms of potential action to break them up?
Well, I would think Google is probably the most, there's already a case in the Justice Department. It's been working its way through. It's been the longest sort of back and forth over not just recently, but a decade of deciding whether Google was too powerful in search, and they certainly are. I suspect there's issues around Amazon, the marketplaces, the marketplace versus selling, and there's I'm not so sure about Apple. I think there are regulatory ways that can be solved. And the thing is, you got to think of this as not just like, let's break them up or we'll not break them up. We've got to do two things. One, ensure competition and the growth of small and innovative companies. And two, not to have power concentrated in certain arenas in hands of just a few players. And so the question is, what's the best thing? And I think each of these companies has there's a different answer for problems at each of these companies.
I mean, Kara, we've all been discussing a lot of these points for a long time. Was the report itself more or less damning than you expected to be? Is it a game changer?
No, I think it was a signal. You know, they'd already been Cicilline, who's been doing a great job here. I actually thought this report was terrific. And he's really steeped himself in the information here and sort of let it go where it should go. I think this has sort of been the slow walk to something we already knew already, which was that these companies dominate areas in ways that are either, if not a monopoly, there's duopolies or oligopolies. And so that's a problem. That they're not scrappy anymore. And the comparison to oil barons and railroad tycoons is not a bad one. And I think we know what happened to them. So
it's a lot of the report reminds me of what Europe has been digging up on these companies for years now. And then their aggressive antitrust chief, Margaret Vestager, has been laying out these reports for years. And so far they've amounted to some fines, maybe some change in business, but it doesn't feel like, is that just because it's in Europe? They don't have the teeth to force any sort of separation? Or, I mean, I guess I'm wondering, is the worst that can happen here is just a bunch of fines and potentially some new rule changes?
No, first of all, we need to start funding our agencies that are supposed to monitor these things, whether it's the Justice Department or specifically the FTC. I mean, think about an agency that's been sort of thrust into a job that is well beyond its capabilities, not because they're not competent, but because they're really woefully underfunded. And so you have to think about, like, who is mining the store? And most of these companies have almost no rules governing them except for HR rules that everybody else has to follow, essentially. And so the question is, what are the rules of the road with these companies going forward? Because there haven't been any. And so there's lots of different avenues, whether it's Section 230 reform, whether it's antitrust action, whether it's fines, whether it's regulations, whether, widespread derision, like with Facebook and QAnon, which it finally moved QAnon off its platform, hopefully, probably not. And so there's lots of tools here. That's the thing. There's a ton of tools here, and that's what we have to think about. But I think overall, the direction that it's moving in is significant regulation for tech going forward. And in one case, I think it's highly necessary. In the other, we've got to think about innovation. That's what we have to think about, is promoting innovation, because that's the best solution here.
Shepard Smith here. Thanks for watching CNBC. on YouTube.